Hello everyone, and thank you for joining this Disruptive Innovation Festival open mic Google Hangout. The Disruptive Innovation Festival is an online open access event that invites thought leaders, entrepreneurs, businesses, designers, makers and learners to explore the question, the economy is changing. What do I need to know, experience and do? My name is Leo Nutter, and today I'm delighted to introduce the chair of this discussion, Pat Patarunataporn, who is co-founder and director of innovation at HumanityX and is a BioX researcher at the Biodesign Institute at the Arizona State University. Pat, it's great to have you here at the Disruptive Innovation Festival.
Thank you very much, Leo, and welcome everyone to our session. This session will be focusing on the hackathon and the impact of society. I'm delightful to have these wonderful panelists with me. May I introduce all of them? Starting with Dr. Neil Lester, the Director of Project Humanities and co-creator of Hack for Humanity at Arizona State University. The second panelist is Dr. Casey McCollum, the co-founder and the Director of Operation at HumanityX. Dr. Michael Burnham Fink from School for the Future of Innovation in Society, Arizona State University. Dr. Chetan Sarabu, medical MD Clinical Informatics Fellow at Stanford University, Stanford Children's Hospital. And last but not least, we have Mr. Neil Gandhi, MD candidate and co-founder and also CTO of Biometrics Analytics. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So to start off this session, I would like to direct the first question to Dr. Burnham Fink. So, for some of the audience, they may not know what the hackathon is. So I would like you to start by explaining to us what is hackathon and why is it disruptive?
Thank you. So a hackathon is a short-term burst of innovation where a large number of people get together, form small groups, and work on projects to try and get them to some sort of minimally viable state, just to show that something is possible. And this is interesting because we have a lot of stories about how innovation traditionally occurs. The two big ones are innovation comes from some kind of monomaniacal guy in a garage, your Tesla, your Steve Jobs, who stays up all day and night working super hard on his invention. Or innovation comes from these big organizations, companies, the government, the military, where thousands of people come together to build a moon lander or something like that. And those stories of innovations have a lot of flaws. What the hackathon does is it makes innovation less like work and more like play, more like a game. It opens up innovation to people who exclude it because of their social roles, because they don't have a free time to spend nights and evenings in a garage because they don't work for a big engineering firm.
Right.
And the last part that I find most interesting is that if you want my flip definition of what innovation is failing in a different way every time. The fact is that most stuff just doesn't work. With a hackathon, it's okay not to succeed. The idea is to try a lot of things and see what good ideas come out of it without having the whole commitment of having this be your company's strategy for the next 3 years.
Right. That's a very good explanation for the hackathon. So for the second question, now we have some sort of like humanitarian hackathon. So I would like to ask this question to both Dr. Lester and Neil about what does that mean to hacks for making a positive change in society?
Well, I think relative to the Hacks for Humanity here at Arizona State University, we have been able to use the umbrella of what we call Project Humanities. Project Humanities is an award-winning university initiative that's about 4 years old. And we try to demystify humanities. And one way that we try to do that is to get people to recognize that we do humanities all the time. So we have sort of tried to offer a succinct way of talking about humanities by talking about talking, listening, and connecting. And under that large umbrella of bringing communities together, bringing generations together, bringing disciplines together, is this notion that how can we bring disciplines together through some innovations, thus the hackathon. And for us, the hackathon is something that's typically not done within a humanities group. But I think what makes this different is the fact that our hackathon is not just about what can we do to show that we are better together than separated, and how are we more like our hand graphic, which suggests we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one is the hand. But how can we build technologies around what we call our shared humanity? And in this case, we call it Humanity 101. It is not a class, but rather something that is so foundational to any success, whether it's in the boardroom or on the basketball court, is how can we implement what we call the 7 principles of Humanity 101. These are compassion and empathy, forgiveness, integrity, kindness, respect, self-reflection. And I think what makes this different, Pat, is that we are trying to build technologies, but whatever the technology that comes out of this particular 36 hours in our case, it has to reflect 3 or more of these values. And I think that's what the essence of our trying to move towards something that is greater than ourselves individually.
Great question, great answer. So for Neil, I know that you are part of Stanford Hackathon. And I know that Stanford Hackathon has many themes that's related to, making positive change in terms of like medical, societal. Can you elaborate on what does that mean to hacks for social good?
Sure, absolutely. So I was part of a group this year called Shift, and within Shift, there's a subset called Health Plus Plus. And Health Plus Plus was the first initiative at Stanford to bring together people on the medical side, physicians, nurses, residents, and medical students, to bring them together with engineering students, as well as business people and design people, to really create new and innovative ideas that could actually have a lasting impact on people.
Right.
So Dr. Lester's put it very plainly, put it very excellently, that you need to have compassion. You need to have an understanding of the people you're trying to make an impact on. And the people who understand that best is the patients themselves and the healthcare providers that interface with those patients on a daily basis. However, these people are generally not the best people to also come up with the best technology to use. So how do you create that kind of marriage? Is you bring these people together, people who are isolated maybe in their different silos. You bring them together and have them innovate together and co-create together. And that's what Health Plus Plus has done this last year. We had our hackathon just 2 weekends ago. And we brought together around 200 to 300 people all together over a weekend to come up with just such brilliant ideas. And how do we take technology and interface it with humanity in healthcare?
So, that's really great to hear that, the hackathon now is moving toward more audience, more people participate in. So,
industries,
and industry as well. So for Dr. Casey McCollum, you are part of the non-technical participants. What was your experience participating at the hackathon for the first time?
Well, the first time I didn't understand this marriage of technology and non-technical people, and meaning just in nature of being able to program or to design in that kind of way. And I wasn't sure what value I would actually bring, but I was assured by leadership that it would be something interesting and I should try it. What was also interesting is this community call brought different ages and different experiences together. And when I was actually participating, I stopped feeling like I didn't have something valuable to bring. I felt like very a part of my team and very creative. And so it actually, for me, it had reminded me of being in school, in grad school, and working through exciting projects, but on a limited time. So really putting your best effort in to create something in this short little burst. And that was exciting because I hadn't got to have this sort of free range experience. And then afterwards, it was such a elevating experience that I think the team that I was with, we broke the mold of, I think, what these innovative 36-hour projects are like by becoming an actual business. we kept sticking together to continue to work on the technology that we designed and kept innovating. So I think that's a whole different experience, but that's something wonderful that I think comes out from that connection between community and technical community coming together.
Right. So, you know, as Dr. Lester and Neil speak about the hackathon that they created, we kind of see that there's not only like business people or technical people or like technical people, but everyone kind of come together. So, Dr. Sarabu, I have a question. You are a practicing doctor, but you also be part of this Medicine X community where, you know, we see the interaction between technology and humanity and design. What do you think is the critical role of humanitarian people in innovation?
Thank you very much for the question, Pat. I think it's really key and really appropriate to think of humanity and humanitarian people at the center of innovation. I think the concept of humanity really offers a very clear lens to think about everything we do. My particular field is healthcare, and healthcare is really, you know, primarily about people. And as we see a lot of change happening across many different industries and sectors, people are starting to be worried about where the future is heading.
Right.
People are afraid that traditional jobs may change. There's a lot of concerns that healthcare doesn't work well. There's a lot of people who are left out. And as we think about all the different type of innovation that's happening, I think thinking about humanity really offers the clearest lens. And for example, at Medicine X, you have patients as well as physicians and nurses all coming together, and we're starting to see these different trends. So there's a focus on patient-centered design, but one of the pushbacks from that sometimes you see is doctors feel like maybe things are too patient-focused, and, you know, like, what about doctor-centered things?
Right.
And so I think the question shouldn't actually be patient-centered or doctor-centered. It actually should be humanity-centered. What actually makes us all common, because we all feel the same 7 human elements that you had, Dr. Lester had pointed out earlier. And so I think that's why it's really important to think about that lens of humanity. And I also wanted to add, I think humanity offers unique strengths that computers don't have. For example, one of the things I love about being human is the ability to forget. We often think about computers as these machines that can remember everything, and people often value people who have strong memories. But I think just as importantly is the ability to forget, and that makes us very human, because if we remembered every traumatic thing that ever happened to us, we wouldn't be able to move on. And in society today, we're surrounded by data just from so many different directions, and people are feeling overwhelmed. So actually, how can we so people are actually interested in actually forgetting. And just one popular example is Snapchat, that really took off because it was the idea of sending pictures to people that then just disappeared. And so I think we're getting to this stage where we're thinking of these human principles of how as humans we have the power to forget, and kind of think about applying that to technology. So I think that's what I really think humanity offers when we think about innovation.
Right. I like that. You know, when you say about something about forgetting, I think it's also related to forgiving as well, because once you can forget something that's happening in the past, then you can forgive the bad thing and then move forward. And I think that's a clear and very best way to articulate that. So, Dr. Lester and Neil, you mentioned about your hackathon, and I think it's very wonderful that we see a lot of like the power of coming together. So, what's the highlight, and what are some challenges in organizing this kind of hackathon?
Well, it's interesting because as a person who doesn't self-identify as a technology person, the concept of that was not just different for me personally, But even institutionally, there were those, because this has not quite caught on in the Southwest in ways that it has on the West Coast and even on the East Coast. So there's this notion that I had to sort of jump through to let my institution know that hacking is really about building something. Right. It is not about breaking into somebody's email or breaking into somebody's Target account. And so that in and of itself presented challenges when we tried to create a broader net of those who might come and participate. Right. So in year one, as we're going into our fourth year, just having finished the third, year one was sort of letting people know that this was not something that was only for those who knew how to code. That's hugely cultural when you say the word hackathon and you describe what it is. Well, it's 36 hours of bringing both technical folks and non-technical folks and everybody in between, all ages, all professions together to create something. Each person has a place on the team, and it becomes one of those things that we talk about. There is no success without collaboration. Absolutely. So the biggest challenge was just explaining to people that this is for you. And even if you can't participate as one of the participants who's innovating, you can be there as a mentor, you can be there as a workshop leader, you can be there as a volunteer who's helping to facilitate. So this is one of those places where everybody can come together and create new connections. And it has happened every single year, and it's gotten bigger and better. And the fact that we've got some strategic partners, both institutionally and organizationally, means that we are doing something where people feel welcome now. So we don't have to do that same sort of explaining now. People are like, when is the next hackathon? And can I bring my buddies? You know, when you have 23 high school students coming in and working not with each other because they know each other, but creating new teams of new individuals, then that in and of itself is a new way of creating community.
I see. So what are some highlights?
That was the highlight, is to first of all, is to move through that sort of cultural barrier. Absolutely. But recognizing also that people were so energized after the 36 hours to see what each person had created. So not only do we have the success story of Arc Humanity, which has become its own 501c3 around social media and suicide prevention as Humanity X, but we have others out there who are anticipating and building for our next tsunami of, we hope, innovations that come across as being very humanity-centric. So that was both the challenge, but also the highlight to be able to get through that.
Well, I love the word tsunami of innovation.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I think it's resonate with the idea of disruptive innovation.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And
absolutely.
you know, I think Neil, you can talk a lot about you know, that kind of hackathon, and I'm pretty sure that from Stanford Hackathon there are a lot of tsunami of innovation.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the greatest things that came out of the Health Plus weekend was the caliber of projects that people had at the end of the 48-hour period. It's incredible. There were functioning apps, there were functioning prototypes for muscle stimulation. There were business models that were well thought out. It's really incredible what can happen when you bring people together, even in a concentrated period of time. Some of the challenges is, I agree with Dr. Lester. Even in Silicon Valley, where coding and hackathons are thrown out every other day, it was difficult to get that message across to the medical community, which tends to be a little bit more traditional in a sense, where people may not know what a hackathon is. They may not know that it's, you know, creating something, breaking something. And even medical community here at Stanford, that was a challenge in getting people together, especially the non-technical people. So, but you know, that's the challenge of marketing in a certain way. That's part of the reason why our hackathon is called Health Plus, and it's not called, you know, Medical Hackathon. It's a way to convey a message in a way that doesn't polarize people. But in the end, sorry,
Neil. There was just a question coming through that you may be able to ask, Neil. When organizing a hackathon, what advice would you have for somebody who's doing it for the first time, when they're trying to create something with humanity in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key thing is first reach out to the technology community, probably the CS community, because they may have experience in organizing hackathons. So that's kind of where we started. We reached out to the undergraduate group called SHIFT, which is Stanford Health Innovations Technology Frontiers group, and they had a lot of experience organizing hackathons. They had never done one on the scale of integrating it into medicine. And that's where I came in. That's where other medical students come in. So it's important to start with people who have a sense of organizing hackathons. Reach out around the country. There's hackathons at Stanford, at MIT, at Arizona. So there's many places around the country. And I think many of these programs are very receptive to hearing about people that want to start a hackathon in a similar vein. We reached out to MIT's Hacking Medicine back in the spring, and they were very helpful in giving advice. So I think this community spans larger than the university itself. I think it's a national or global community, and reaching out to them and how to get started would be helpful. But I think the main advice I give is start with a technology community that knows how to do hackathons, and then bring your own expertise into it, and bring expertise from all the different parties that would be involved, including the non-technical people, to kind of mold it into something that can be for humanity.
Mm-hmm. Great, fantastic. So I have the last question that I prepared for Dr. Burnham Feng. One of your research interests is in hackathon, and you were working on studying this notion of hacking for social good. So what are some interesting discovery that you have found in doing research in hackathon?
Yeah, I found a bunch of very interesting stuff. This is all preliminary.
Okay.
But so first I'd like to say that 2/3 of the people who attended the hackathon and who took our surveys, this was their first hackathon.
Right.
So we're bringing in a lot of new people, even in year 3.
Mm-hmm.
We broke people into technical and non-technical roles, and people in technical roles looked pretty much like the Arizona State University Computer Science Department. About 20 plus or minus, very male, white and or Asian. The non-technical participants looked like the community as a whole. Wider ranges of ages, equally divided between men and women, more racial diversity. So if you want to get a truly diverse hackathon, if you want to have one that represents your community, I think it's important to bring in non-technical roles as well as just various forms of programming and app creation.
Right.
Something which was interesting, which we did, was we asked people which values they thought important were in technology. We had about 25 adjectives, and they had to rank them from very unimportant to very important.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the ones which popped out as just immediately important. It's important that a technology works.
Right.
It's important that a technology is respectful.
Mm-hmm.
The least important value that we had was profitability.
Interesting.
Yes. Doesn't have to make money, just has to make the world a better place.
Great.
That's powerful.
That's powerful. Dr. Sarabu.
And encouraging.
And encouraging as well,
Right.
absolutely. Dr.
Right.
Sarabu, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think I really echo, I think, all the comments that were made before, and really also agree with the idea of really technology, especially driven by a hackathon. I think really thinking about the force for good for humanity that it's adding is really important as a consideration, way above profitability. And I think that's actually what motivates people to come to these creative spaces. One of the other things I wanted to add was for students and people who are still early in their training, to build unique connections between different disciplines you might not anticipate, because sort of the energy at the hackathon really comes from bringing people from these different backgrounds, because everybody is trying to solve problems that affect humanity, that affect the environment, the globe. And so even within your own self, even whatever field you choose to study, you should really kind of think of branching out and pick a discipline that doesn't necessarily clearly connect to what you're trying to do, and to study it. Maybe you could take some classes, you can minor, but it'll actually give you insights that you had never expected to learn before. For my own case, when I knew I wanted to go into medical school, but I had an interest in design, and in college, I very randomly and serendipitously found the Department of Landscape Architecture. Wow. And I didn't know the first thing about landscape architecture. It sounded cool, and I actually hated going outside, but for some reason I took a class there, and and it was wonderful. It was actually all about healthcare in a way I didn't realize. We were talking about how do you design cities to get people to walk? How do you design gardens to improve people's mental health? How do you plant food in inner city areas that don't have food? And there were things that no one had ever told me that landscape architecture was about healthcare, but everything I learned was about that. And I think, you know, I'm not telling everyone to go be a landscape architect, but I think the interesting thing is our world is going through so much change right now, and the traditional disciplines that we have crafted don't necessarily prepare us for a changing world. So I think you sort of want to hack your own self and kind of look outside the borders of your traditional discipline and just pick random things that may not make sense at first, but in due time, I think those skills you learn from a different place, the different communities it connects you to, can really make you a stronger individual, more resilient for the future.
Right.
I want to add something to that relative to, that's sort of how I discovered Pat.
Okay.
Pat was at the first hackathon and was also a member of the winning team. But what I noticed as a person who was sort of walking around and coordinating and just sort of monitoring everything was Pat's design talents. And he had this beautiful picture of a hand and something was moving on the screen. To me, it didn't have anything to do with your biology major. It had to do with your sense of design. And as a result of that, Pat designed our Hacks for Humanity website this time. So I know Pat not because of his bio design connection as a researcher, but as this designer who is also interested, who's also very graphically talented. And I think that's what this gives people an opportunity to do. Right. But I'll also say that, you know, when we're talking about the challenges, there are those hackathons that target particular communities. And so some of the people who come to our hackathons have wanted to come as a team. And one of the things that we have tried to do is to be consistent in saying that you form teams on the spot. And so each person registers as a specific something. You're a humanist, you're a designer, you're a generalist, you're a technology person. And the idea is so that we can create community and not have somebody coming in sort of prepackaged. Right. The same thing relative to ideas. This is not something where we present an idea and say, okay, here's a challenge that we have, please create something. The idea is that community is created there. And I also see that not only was that a challenge, but that was also one of the benefits as evidenced in the Humanity X team, who didn't know each other. 2 were from the community outside of ASU, 3 from the community, undergraduate, graduate student. Right. And they have sort of created this familial kind of model that becomes something that we look at very highly and say the potential is there for that. So, you know, it's not as if a group of people can come in and they're going to win the hackathon. You know, they come in because they're interested, and some people did leave because they wanted to be with their friends, as opposed to sort of looking at how do we get people together who ordinarily wouldn't come together.
And meet new people.
Right. And form new relationships.
You know, I think what's powerful about you saying that is that even during the creation, when we were creating our award-winning tool, we said to each other that it didn't matter if we won. Like, we were really just connected and brought together by the ideas that we were creating, and could we do what we thought we could do? And that became a more powerful part of our relationship at that hackathon, and then actually was the binding piece for us to continue on as a group, to continue to build. And I think that's what keeps us going today, is our belief in what we were creating, and that we could do something for good that could spread out. Right. And be bigger than us.
Right. Well, and what's also interesting, and I'll defer to someone else if you want to add something to this, but this notion that once we sort of had some success doing this, and there was some energy, then we had others who started coming to us saying we'd love to be participants in that. So you mentioned speaking outside of or looking across boundaries and disciplines. But we now have a partnership with the engineering school and the business school, and we now have mentors who can post hackathon continue innovating with those teams if they're interested. So that's what I'm saying. The possibilities are actually quite endless. And the fact that we have, some corporate support is also fantastic. The fact that that Arizona State looks at this particular hackathon as one of its exemplars for innovation, it helps give us more momentum to move this forward. And again, the fact is that this came from a place where people don't expect something technology and humanities to come together, when in fact it's there. It's always been there.
It's always there.
It's always there.
One thing that I would like to touch base on, I love when Dr. Shaitan said that you need to hack your own self as well as participate in the hackathon. I think that the notion that you need to be open and welcome new things to come to your life, your experience. I think that's very powerful. Especially all of us are affiliated with educational institution in some sense. And this kind of hackathon is kind of like breaking down the classroom, bringing people from discipline together. Dr. McCollum, you are also an educator. What do you think about that?
I think it's so powerful and important to break those barriers and to get people from all areas involved. I mean, this is our community, this is our world, and we are bonded by more than school walls. And so that's what was so powerful, because me coming from the community and not in my academic role gave me the freedom to design and share ideas with people I might not come across normally. And it was liberating. And I think that I was able to share that back out into the community. And so the following year, I saw more people of different ages come and connect with the university when they weren't connected to the university, and start to share with students some of their experiences. And it just changed the environment to a powerful creation tool. And so that's where I see innovation happening and excitement about what we're all doing in this world, and that we have more commonalities and things that divide us. And it's such a powerful experience that I'm taking notes right now, thinking about, how we're the dreamers. This is what's really important about creating new things to help people to change our ideas out there and to innovate. I think it's an opportunity.
I said I wasn't going to say, but I'll say this again. I said, part of Project Humanities started as a charge from our president to make humanities more robust. And I was an administrator then, and the idea was to say, how could it, at least from my perspective, was to look at how we might engage larger communities. For too many, humanities as a subject tends to be something that is reserved for a classroom. And rather than talking about disciplines, what we wanted to look at was not so much what does it mean to be human, but rather how are we human? How do we practice? What is the quality of our lives? What questions do we ask of any given circumstance, as opposed to sort of this is how you do it. Why are we doing it? And I think the hackathon is but one strategy that the project has used to bring people together to talk, listen, and connect. And it is one strategy that continues to build, but we sort of balance that with, we have a theme song called Love is in the Air, Breathe Deep. And that was written about 3 years ago, and the lyrics of that is sort of shedding away vanity and intolerance. That's exactly what happens in this hackathon. It is no longer about individuals, but rather what can the individuals coming together create that they couldn't create by themselves and alone. And the reality, again, is that there is no success without collaboration.
I like that. So Neil, when you talk about big data earlier, and I think it's a very interesting tool that impact us all, because we have this kind of device, and people now can send us messages even they are far away from us. So my question for you is that when you engage in this diverse hackathon, and you work with doctors and you work with engineers, what are some interesting projects that came out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really interesting to see how big data plays a role in understanding information, but you also can't forget that you're designing ultimately for a person. So kind of reminding that idea of how do we design a tool for someone to use to help them, let's say, manage a chronic disease, as well as gain information about how they manage their chronic disease, so then we can better iterate as healthcare providers. So try to create this whole feedback loop, basically, between the patient, the provider, and back to the patient. Feedback loop already exists. It happens every time you go into the clinic. But we want to get it out of the clinic. Because 99% of the time, you're not in a clinic. And 90% of the time is when health actually affects you. So we want healthcare to move outside the clinic and engage in people in a way we can get this feedback loop. And one of the projects, the winner of the hackathon, was a team. The team name was Farm Assist, very clever name. And what they did was they designed a way for patients to better manage the amount of pills they're taking each day, in a very simplified and easy way to do that's also scalable and trackable. So the idea they came up with was you have a pill bottle, and on the bottom of the pill bottle, they're attaching a sticker with some dots on it that are touch sensitive, in the sense that same way you touch a touch screen and it creates a command, the sticker will have dots on it that are touch sensitive and create a command on the screen. So the idea is you have your iPhone just like this, and on this, it'll just be a screen, and then you take the pill bottle and put it on the screen, and it will tell you all the information you need to know about that pill you're taking, the prescription, the number of times you need to take it a day, and it will automatically set reminders for you to take that pill when it's set to be taken. So people who have maybe one pill a day they're taking, this may not be that big of a jump, but a lot of these chronic diseases, things like heart failure, things like diabetes, maybe mental disorders, they have a lot of different pills they're taking every day, and it's hard to remember exactly which to take when. So this kind of helps streamline that process. And this is designing for the patient in mind, making it very simple for them to use. Now, the other flip side of it is there's data being generated from a patient taking their pill and placing it on that phone. So that data being generated on the phone is telling recorded that when is the patient taking this pill, how many times are they taking? Are they taking it as prescribed? Now that information can be fed back to the healthcare provider. So the healthcare provider knows if a person has high blood pressure, is it because the meds are not working, or is it because the patient is not taking the meds as prescribed?
Interesting.
And so that information is so valuable in figuring out new kinds of treatments, or whether or not they should up the dosage, or they should keep the dosage the same, but then figure out, why does the patient not take the medication as prescribed? Is it because it's hard to remember? Is it because it's hard to get from a pharmacy? Maybe they don't have access to a car or a transportation system to get to the pharmacy. Or maybe it's just too expensive for them and they need to be switched to a medication that's maybe cheaper. So that's how you bring in the social aspects of medicine with technology and big data and design thinking.
Right. I remember. Yeah. Oh, I think my echo.
Sorry. Was there another part to the question?
Oh no. I'm just curious. I was in Singapore last summer, and I went to one exhibition about they call it the Big Bang of data. And one thing that they talk about is that, are we become our data? Like, are we more than the data that we generated? Because right now we generate tremendous data, you know, and people are mining it to do some good thing and to do some evil thing. So I'm just curious, what do you think about the role of big data, and how can we use it for social good? What's the limitation of that?
So you're absolutely right. We're generating tremendous amounts of data. I think the data we're generating is in specific areas. So like internet connectivity. So everyone who goes online and uses online shopping like Amazon, that's generating a lot of data about users that way. I think in other areas we're not generating as much data, like in like in healthcare, because it's very siloed off. So I think big data is important, but the bigger thing you need to figure out is, are we getting great insights from that data? And that so far has not been shown in a way that can be humanitarian. And I think a lot of people are working toward it. There's teams of people all across the world working to how do we gain insights that can be helpful in managing population health, or managing clinic visits, or looking at nutrition and health across the world. So I think the main thing you need to figure out is not just how do we generate a lot of data, but how do we actually mine it to get insights that are actionable. You can get trends all you want, you can get correlations everywhere, but it does not mean that you can take that data and actually do some sort of action from it. And that's what we really need to be focusing on, is how do we generate action from insight, from data.
Right.
And I'd hate to be a little bit more skeptical, but the values that we found most important in technology, or at least some of the ones that were most important, were integrity and respectfulness. That you tell the truth, that you're respectful of somebody. And this is something that people are, well, we could be better at it, but we're okay at it. Computers are very bad at this. They have no sense of social context, almost by definition. And as somebody who works with, well, not big data sets, but with small data sets, I know that getting truth out of data and getting a respectful kind of truth out of data is very artful, very difficult. And I don't know, the thing that concerns me is that the way that our data representations create stories which may be statistically verifiable with very nice p-values and all that, but which may not actually match our social identities. And what do we do and feel and experience in this moment of disconnection between our subjectivity and between what the objective data has told about us?
I agree with you there completely. In medicine, we have a terminology we use, that what's the difference between statistical significance and clinical significance. And maybe Chetan can talk a little bit more about that. But it's basically, you can find a great p-value and find that, a treatment is statistically significant. But if it's not making an impact in that patient's daily life, then what's the point?
Exactly.
Leo, we have a question from the audience, right?
Yes, we've got quite a few questions coming through on the session page. So we've got approximately 15 minutes left. Some great discussion so far. Which question shall I ask here? Okay, so there's been a lot of discussion about how hackathons can be used as a way to get socially responsible technological advancements. But Rose would like to ask, how do I find out about hackathons that are happening near me? Would anyone like to pick up on that?
Well, they're hackathon newsletters and listservs, and you sort of just type in regionally or locally hackathons going on in your region. And it's also good to sort of have whatever, if you're doing a hackathon, that sort of part of that system, so that others know too, because we do have people from other states coming in. So there's an online sort of search that you can do, local hackathons.
Sure. And there's another question that asks.
Sorry, could I add something to that?
Of course, yes.
I also, just one of the other points I wanted to make is for people who feel overwhelmed by the technology, there's different subsets of hackathons that are maybe not necessarily called hackathons, but are really in the same spirit. And I think it's really most exemplified by the builder and maker community, and people who maybe don't code, but build physical objects. And sometimes you can represent a technological idea even without being able to code, but through physically building something. And I took part in one particular event, which is called the it's called the design challenge. It was called a design challenge, and it was similar to a hackathon. It was a weekend-long event, And the unique thing about this was that it actually focused on children. It was at a Ronald McDonald House, so it was children who are frequently hospitalized. But the principles were very similar. It was about combining different groups of people together and then trying to think, really using the lens of humanity and how to improve the experience. But there was no technical hacking required. There was a lot of physical objects with just paper, different odds and ends. And children were very creative in building unique solutions. One child actually used different PVC pipe to build a better way for him to take his medication and water at the same time. And so I just wanted to kind of point out, if you Google builder and maker communities, you'll find these events that are very similar to hackathons, but maybe have less technical requirements. But that being said, to echo the earlier points, that hackathons really don't require technical coding. It really brings everyone together.
And sometimes you can go there to learn new skill too, to learn from one another. That's important too. Other question?
That's awesome.
Sure. So as you just mentioned, the word hacking there's kind of a negative connotation with the word itself, and the phrase hackathon, you think perhaps something cynical is going on. Have you seen this as a barrier in spreading the idea of hackathons? And are there any other barriers that you think are getting in the way of hackathons being a source for collaboration?
Right. Neil, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, so can you repeat the question one more time? It cut out a little bit, the sound. Sorry.
Sure. So hacking and the term hackathons may be perceived as quite a negative thing. So have you found this to be a barrier in any way? And if there are any other more obvious barriers in spreading the word of hackathons as a form of social engagement?
Sure. It absolutely is a barrier. I'm not going to lie and say it isn't. But at the same time, it is an opportunity to educate people on what a hackathon could be. So it's up to you to get your message across and say, it's a hackathon, but really we're including everybody. And it's you can have technical and non-technical roles. And I think making that clear on the outside is a great way to bring the term hackathon to new communities that may find it negative to begin with. So you can look at it as a barrier, but I look at it as a challenge, and how to bring a term that's very positive in the technology community to the non-technology communities. Are there other barriers? I think the other main barriers is just marketing this to the right crowd to get them excited for about a weekend, because you are asking someone to give up a weekend, and people have very busy schedules. Many doctors work weekends, many residents are there on weekends, so they're saying, instead of having free time on that weekend, you're saying have them come to a hackathon. So I think being very clear about what can they expect to get out of it, getting very excited about attending this sort of event. And I think there's probably an inflection point once you get just enough people excited. Those people tend to get their friends excited, tend to get their families excited. So you kind of get a network effect, but you have to hit that critical mass first. And that's just a lot of emailing and a lot of in-person conversations with key opinion leaders that can maybe influence others.
Great. And are hackathons
solely... sorry, could I...
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Shefan.
Sorry, I just wanted to add in terms of the name itself, one thing I wanted to add is from the design world. There's a tradition of basically hackathons, but kind of without the technology. And the term that's been used is a charrette. It's a CHARETTE. That's a term that's used for, like, say you're a city planner and there's a park and you don't want to tell the community what should be in the park. How do you actually bring everyone in the community together, from kids to adults, and do a creative weekend-long exercise to reimagine what the park should look like? And so in that design world, the term that's used is a charrette. It's very specific to the design world, but in essence, it is a hackathon. So I just wanted to point that out there too, as we think about different analogous events that go on in the same spirit.
Sure. And another question that came through is, does everybody have to be in the same vicinity? Can people join hackathons virtually?
That's a good question. I know that there are some hackathons that allow people to participate online. You know, like we are talking right now, we can have a meeting and, you know, assign different tasks to different people around the world. Yeah. Do we have online participants from at Stanford Hackathon?
So I as far as participants, so key team members all had to be there for the duration of the weekend. And I think you get a different energy when people are there in person versus there online. And you should be keep that in mind. I think it is possible, but the energy might be a lot lower than if someone was there in person. I think it creates a stronger community and just a bigger, greater bond between people. On the other hand, though, people who are participating in the hackathon in a lower time commitment range, people like mentors that can pop in for a little bit, key opinion leaders, people who understand particular need areas very well, those people I think can be virtual. So you can make a phone call and say, you know, I'm really trying to understand this medical space, for example. I want to call up the neurologist who's an expert in this space. Having people who are mentors be virtual, I think is definitely possible. That is something that we actively used. But at the same time, having key participants who are actually doing that hacking, both in a non-technical and technical way, I think it's beneficial to be there in person.
Absolutely.
I absolutely agree. I observed one of the groups very closely for the whole thing, and they spent 4 hours talking back and forth about their idea and how to make their idea. And then once they started working, it became very quiet. In fact, it seemed like the hackathon as a whole. But that initial energy of everybody talking with each other, over each other, trying to get their voices heard above a loud, echoey room, I think that's key. And you can't get that through a webcam.
Right.
However, I'm going to go a little different on this one. I think that in innovating, it's not possible. And with the technology we continue to build and to connect this together may allow us to have people from all over the world participate at the same time and sort of see what things are happening and creating and going on. So I don't think it will stunt the growth of them. It may help us do something different. So as we continue to do our live events, it might be interesting to connect with people who are having similar events with similar things going on to kind of see what is creating, you know, what's going on out there. So I think that having the web joins us together in some ways that maybe we couldn't get together before. So, you know, as a person who tried it for the first time and had little technical experience, I believe there are a lot of things possible.
Absolutely, everything is possible. Sky's the limit. That's what they say.
Yeah, it's for the dreamers.
So, any other questions? I think we have.
We may have time for one more. I've got a question through that are interested in Hacks for Humanity itself. So, where can you direct people who want to know more and perhaps participate themselves?
Oh, absolutely. You can go to our project. You can Google Project Humanities at Arizona State University. And that is one of our initiatives under Humanity 101. And there are videos, testimonials, press releases, media coverage, all kinds of pictures from participants, all there. So again, at Google Project Humanities at Arizona State University, or go to humanities.asu.edu, and it will be there.
How about Health++?
Yeah, Health++, you can find out more at health++.stanford.edu. And it's going to be a yearly event, probably around the same time in early November, late October kind of area. So keep an eye on it. There's also another hackathon that Stanford does that I'm not affiliated with called Tree Hacks. So if you're in the Bay Area and interested in hackathons, Tree Hacks is another one that I know of.
Yep. And for the last 5 minutes, I would like to invite everyone to share the last thought and the vision moving forward about creating innovation and bringing people together. Starting with Dr. Shaitan.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much for the question and for being part of this panel. It's been really, really insightful. And I think I just would like to reiterate my initial point of really thinking of humanity as a lens for thinking about innovation in every aspect of what we do. When you're on a hackathon team or in your day-to-day life and you're faced with a challenge, a difficult decision you're trying to make, really think back to what it means to be human. I think that the 7 principles that were illustrated above are really good for that. And so I think in closing, that's what I would like to highlight. And then just the only addition to that too is you think about the human, you also want to think about the human in context of our global environment as well.
Right.
And how what we do in the environment, how that affects humans. And I know, Pat, you're really involved with biomimicry effort. And I think biomimicry is this really interesting field of getting inspiration from nature. And I think there's a lot of overlap between thinking of humanity as a lens and biomimicry as a lens. So I think in every challenge you face, kind of think about that.
Absolutely. You know,
you.
human is in this world, right? We need to take care of this world as well as us. So I think that's very important. Dr. Lester?
Yeah. Well, in addition to the wonderful products that came out and witnessing the experience, we also had each individual who participated, whether as an innovator, as a volunteer, as a mentor, as a workshop leader, sign our Humanity 101 pledge. So for me, I think the greatest success and highlight is that individuals walked away with a sense that they felt empowered, that when the question of are we losing our humanity arises, and it can from looking at any headlines and news stories, the question is no. And you just participated in something that not only adds to the social good, but you've had an experience that somehow makes you feel empowered.
Right.
That there are things that you can do. So
and empowering is important.
There are ways in which this is way bigger than the products. It's about the experience, and you've created and participated in a community that otherwise you couldn't have without the talking, listening, and connecting.
Absolutely. Dr. Bernfink?
So I started this by talking about stories about innovation. And I didn't mention my favorite one, the one which I actually believe in, which is that technologies are modular and that innovation happens when you put modules together in a new way.
Right.
And innovation speeds up as technologies become more modular, more easily interconnected. And there's a metaphor there for people and for how we connect with one another. So I think what's important about Hacks for Humanity is recognizing humans as emotional beings and about how we connect with each other on an emotional level.
Right.
So that's where the innovation comes from. Figure out how not to be so locked into yourself all the time.
Absolutely. Neil?
Yeah, echoing what many people have said already, especially Chetan with his landscaping anecdote. It's about looking at something through a different lens. It's not about a new technology. It's not about a brand new method or way of doing things. It's about looking at a problem from a different lens and understanding that problem so well that you feel what the person who has the problem feels.
Right.
And once you have that feeling, then that's when the solutions may become more obvious to you.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Dr. Casey McCollum.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like the experience brought new life into my world and really connected me with people that I didn't get to connect with before. And that was the most powerful part, is that these different people came together and were able to make something that is to help make change for the good. And, you know, I often say that I wish to be the change, see the change in the world. And I felt like I really did achieve that with being a part of this community and trying something different and outside of my normal comfort zone. And so I have kind of been out there sort of sharing this with my communities that I'm involved in, and hoping to see people step up and do something different and make a change and make a difference out there.
Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, everyone, for participating in this session. I think that one thing that really resonates to me about the hackathon is that, you know, I always say that innovation is not the product, but it's the process. And I see the hackathon is the new way that break the boundary and get new people and, you know, people that I did not expect, people that I don't know before to come together and do something wonderful in a short period of time. So I think that is very disruptive for me. And that's why I host this session and want to bring people that work in this area together. And please feel free to check both Help Plus Plus Hackathon and Hacks for Humanity at the link that we'll post in the website. So thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you Disruptive Innovation Festival for allowing me to have this discussion. And thank you all the panelists. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you all of the panelists for taking the time out to speak to us today and sharing their experiences with hackathons and how they can be used for social good and to build technological solutions to address pressing issues facing humanity. So yes, just follow those prompts that the panelists gave you if you want to find out more. Unfortunately, that's it for this session at the Disruptive Innovation Festival. This one may be coming to a close, but there are a whole host of sessions coming up in the roughly 7 working days that we have left here at the DIF. Right now, you've just missed the start of it, but right now on the open mic stage, you can join in the discussion about the future of food packaging in the session titled Plant-Based Packaging, a New Approach to Disposables. And I also want to point out to you the session that's happening on the Ellen MacArthur Foundation stage in 1 hour from now, so 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Malcolm Nicholson and Michael Randa will be discussing the education of work. That'll be a fantastic session. I highly recommend it. And as a quick reminder, you can catch up with everything that's gone on with the DIF so far at our website, thinkdiff.co. And one thing that I would recommend, our headliner session today, The Future of Learning with Sir Ken Robinson and Peter Senge, aired today at 3 p.m. So be sure to check that out on the website. Thanks again to Pat and all the speakers. That's it from me at the DIF studio. Until next time.
Bye. Bye.
Goodbye.